So Father Quentin said, "My most rewarding experience as a Marianist has been to discover the tremendous grace that God has given us through Blessed Chaminade in the Marianist charism, and to have the privilege of living that charism, even so poorly, and to share it with others. I am deeply grateful for my Marianist vocation and humbly thankful for the unmerited grace of perseverance."
Some of you may wonder how it is Father Quentin is not retired. And the answer is that when you work for the kingdom of God, you cannot retire. And guess what? How old do you think he is? I don't have an answer to that question, but maybe he can tell us. So please join me in welcome Father Quentin.
Thank you for that great introduction. I usually don't get introductions like that. For your curiosity, I'm 90 years old. For whatever that means. And sometimes I think it's better not to get old, but live your life now when you can. But I'm really thankful to you for inviting me to share some ideas with you. I'm really happy about this, first of all, just because it makes me realize that you young people are studying and putting into practice the virtues of Jesus in your life. I don't think there's anything better than you can do than that, because when you practice those virtues, little by little, you become more like Jesus, and that's just important and great. Also happy for the title of this little conference tonight: How the Virtues Affect Your Personality. Because again, I don't think there's anything you can do better than form your person and your personality. I think we'll see that in some of the things that we're going to share now. So let's start with this. If we're talking about personality, let's have at least an idea of what we mean by personality. We use that always. He has a good personality, has a bad personality. He's a live personality, dull personality. But what that means is your personality is the manner in which you as a person relate to other persons. Because, and it's important. Why is it important? Because when you relate to anyone, you communicate something of yourself, of your person, to that other person. It might be a little, it might be much, could be good and can be bad, but you communicate something. If you don't communicate anything, that it's not a relationship. And the other person, of course, with you. So the manner in which you do this comes much from about what you're communicating. Very hard for a person who might be a bad person to have a good personality. Can be. It's like a lie. I guess you can tell a lie and come off real well for a while. But your personality is extremely important. So we want to see what forms this personality, what it really means. Now, if your personality is a manifestation or a manner in which your person relates to another person, then let's say something about you as a person. There's no other creature on this planet that's more important or more amazing than the human person. And so you're among those. And why can I say that? Well, because there are three characteristics of the human person that really make you what you are and make you so amazing. I think we're going to see that in what follows. The first characteristic of a person, what makes a person, is consciousness. What you are conscious of, what you can reflect on. You see, if you're not conscious of something, you can't live it, you can't experience it. You have to be conscious of reality in order to live reality. So that's extremely important, what you're conscious of and what determines that, what you're conscious of. You know, I had this experience here in Mexico about 20 years ago. At that time, they were building a highway that passed in front of our place. It was pretty far along at the time this happened. It wasn't paved yet, but it was about ready to be paved, and cars could pass over it, but there was practically no traffic. Well, one evening, I went to a neighboring town. It's a mile away to celebrate Mass. And when I came walking back on this highway, and I was walking into the sunset, enjoying the sunset, and it was just nice. The next moment of consciousness was when I woke up in the hospital. And I can remember waking up. I woke up and there was a brother looking down at me, and I looked around and said, "Where in the world are we?" And he said, "We're in the hospital." I said, "What for?" And he smiled, and then I noticed I had a huge gash in my arm, almost down to the bone. My shoulder was all bruised up. My arm, I could hardly move it. My head was all bloody. And I said, "What in the world happened?" And he said, "A bicycle hit you." And I can remember, I laughed. I said, "Are you kidding? A bicycle hit me?" And he said, "Yeah." Between the time that I was watching the sunset and when I woke up in the hospital, I have absolutely no memory. During that time, nothing hurt. I don't remember anything. I couldn't get mad. I couldn't be happy. I couldn't say it. And that means during that time, I didn't live anything as a human person. Blank. You have to be conscious of reality if you want to live reality. So that's the first thing. You know, what determines what you're conscious of? Well, might be interest. It might be what you pay attention to, and so on. We cannot be conscious of everything. That's impossible. we say that God is omniscient. That means God is conscious of everything at every moment because God is infinite. But we're limited. So what you're conscious of depends somewhat on what you direct your attention to and so on. But you live only what you're conscious of. So if you want to live fully, you want to be conscious of as much as you can be conscious of. I don't know if you've ever talked to someone, you start telling him some of your troubles and he says, look, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be conscious of your problems because I don't want to live your problems. Well, the person, in a sense, he's limiting his consciousness. Or it depends on what you do all day. What are you conscious of? Okay, that's the first point. And that makes, it's one of the things that makes you a person. You say, well, my dog is conscious. Well, in a very limited way. Your dog can't remember, you can't reflect, can't communicate, can't. So the consciousness is a very limited, temporary thing. Your consciousness as a person is going to be is permanent. It's forever. There are people who limit their consciousness. If you go on drugs or alcohol or something like that, people say that I feel happy, and they might say it's a very different experience, but it's not reality. So these are just things. Consciousness is a great thing. Be conscious. Be aware. Be awake. So the second characteristic is very much related to it, and that's knowing, knowledge. Why is that so important? Well, it refers a little to what I said at the beginning. When you know something, if you know whatever reality it is, you take that into your person, not physically, but mentally, as an idea, maybe as an image, but that's what you live. We don't live reality directly. We live as we know reality. See, I don't, most of you I don't know, but if I got to know you, if we talked, you know, I see your picture, I already formed some idea about you. Is it correct or not? That's a good question. Because if somebody says to me, well, Yasmin, what's she like? If I start telling somebody what you like, it may be very wrong. But that's what I'm living. Now, the marvelous thing about knowing is that you can know anything. You can't know everything, no, but you can. There's no reality that's out of your reach of knowing it. And if you can know it, that means you take it into your life some way and you live it. So you see that consciousness and knowing go together. And knowing, it's important that when you know, your idea is true. That means it corresponds to reality. Those of you who worked with the virtues, you have silence of the mind. That's what that's all about. I don't have to explain to you or convince you that in our world, in our culture, any of us, we live a lot of things that are just not true. we have ideas of one another that are not true. We don't really know. Many people have ideas about God which are very, very false. But that's what they live. So the capacity you have to know is really amazing. Really amazing. Now, those things go together. The third characteristic, which goes with that, is this is what makes you also a person, is we talk about freedom, but it's your will that's free to say yes or no to any reality. Any reality. We're constantly doing that. What does it mean to say yes to reality? Well, when I say yes, I take it in. I love it. It becomes part of me. When I say no, it means I hold it off. I reject. I reject. Now, we're saying yes and no to reality all the time. Suppose you wake up in the morning, suppose it's raining. Now, how do you live that? Well, you say, rats, today I wanted to take a bike hike and I can't do that now. And why does this have to happen today? And then we can't have a picnic this afternoon. And how do you feel? Well, you feel bad, maybe angry. You're saying no to the rain. That's it. You can't change the rain. You can only change how you live it. Because you could get up and say, hey, well, it's raining. Praise God. Thank God for the rain. It's going to make flowers bloom. It's going to help a lot of farmers. It's going to help. Thank you. I know that this cancels my bike trip, but I'll do something else. Those things happen. I had this experience when I was in Puebla. I used to go to the hospital once a week to minister to the sick. One day I went, and there were two young guys, independent. They didn't even know each other, but they had both been in an accident, and they both had broken bones. Now, the first one I visited, oh, he was angry. He was complaining, why does this have to happen to me? He was very unhappy, and I could understand. You know, nobody likes to be in bed with broken bones. But then a few beds later, when another guy about the same age, he was also in an accident and he had similar fractures. And he was smiling. And I said, do you like being this way? And he said, no, I don't. He said, but this happened, and I'm just going to try to live through this and heal up and see what I can learn from this. And I thought, my gosh, two guys in a similar situation. One is saying no, and the other one's saying yes. We do this with each other too, don't we? Okay, when I say yes to you, that means you can come into my life and welcome. If I say no, boy, I put you in your place. We do this with everything. Now, some people don't respond to anything. Well, they're just not conscious of reality. But when you say yes or no, you're practically, in a large part, you're farming your own destiny. If you're happy or not happy, that's not because of things that happen to you. It's how you live them, how you live. So most of the time, well, many people, this is just not the way we live, you know. If I make a mistake, I look for somebody to blame. that means I don't want to really live. I don't want to live my mistakes. Somebody else's fault. If you can't find anybody else to blame, you blame God. That's God's will. You see, God made us to be free. That means He wants us to be able to do everything, because we want to do it. We want to do it. And we're free in that sense to do that. If we don't do things that hamper our will and make us incapable of deciding, but freedom is it's a great thing. And if God wants us to be free, He wants us to cultivate that in one another, in your relationship, in your personality. Does it really bring out the freedom in the other person? Or do we put limits? Do we coerce? Do we and so on? It would be just great if everybody would be able to live and do everything because they want to. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is going to be pleasant. It doesn't mean everything's going to be a happy situation. But it does mean that if you live things in freedom, as Jesus said, that that really makes you free. You'll know the truth. You live the truth. You're free. A free person is a happy person because you do it because you want to. Now, that's all. I'm not going into this other theme, but it's the basis of love also. If any relationship is not really free, that means we're putting conditions on one another that just make it hard. In any relationship that's not working, if you listen carefully, just watch the conditions they're putting on one another. Freedom, you do it because you want to. And we're made to do that. So that's just one of the things that also say, do I really want to be free or not? Do I really want to live that way or not? Okay, now those three things make you the person. Now, your personality is going to express these things in some way or other when you communicate with other people. A person who is conscious, who knows, and it does it freely, acts freely, is going to have a very positive personality. You might even say, hey, he's got a charming personality. Examine those three qualities in that person. Your most important dynamic in your as a person are your relationships with other people, because of what's given and what's received. You see, in a relationship that's conscious and knowledgeable and free, you want to give the other person because you want to. You want the good of the other person. Maybe because you like the other person. That's great. But you're giving. And you say, yeah, but what about me? Well, if other persons relate to you in the same way, you're going to receive a lot. You don't take it. See, when I take something from you, that's not freedom. I take it. I demand it. It's my right. See, again, practically any lawsuit is not really a free dialogue. We're working on rights, And there has to be. But if we're at that level, it's not really where we want to be yet. Now, what does all this have to do with the virtues? How do the virtues affect your personality? Well, in the light of what we said about personality, you any one of the virtues, and if you see how that's practiced, you'll see what it does to your person and your personality. Just take the first one, silence of words. It means speaking, talking. Everybody talks. And okay, now when you talk, what do your words communicate? And see, the practice of silence of words is try to make, we want to make our words communicate what's good for others, the best, the truth. And that's going to affect your personality. It's just automatic. A person who's always wanting to speak in a helpful way, in a true way, is going to have a positive characteristic in his personality. You can take that any of the virtues. Just one other example. If you take the virtue of obedience, a lot of people think obedience is only when somebody gives me a command and I fulfill it. I carry it out. Well, that's obedience in a very restricted sense. But Father Chaminade talked about obedience as you're wanting to do the will of somebody else. So if you know what that other person wants, and you say, I'm going to do it, that's a very, very positive. You're saying yes to that person in a very deep way, and you get to know that person if you really want to understand what that person's will is, and so on. It forms your personality. I would think that a person who really practices the virtues really comes to have a beautiful personality. I think that's why some commentators say that Jesus had to have a very attractive personality. Well, he was pretty hard on people at times, but it was in the truth. And something in him really attracted people, even the ones who didn't like him. And so I think that's all part of it. Well, okay. There's also just a final note. When you talk about a virtue, you're talking about some capacity of your person which you're using to do good. That's what we call virtue. Now you can use that same capacity to do evil. If you are capable of telling the truth and speaking good, with that same capacity, you could be bad. You could tell lies. You could deceive people. Any of the virtues are like that. So the virtues are capacities of your person which you use to do good. Now, in your study, there are 18 of those. So if you practice all of them, I'd say you're going to be a pretty, not only good person, you're going to be a very attractive personality. That doesn't mean everybody's going to like you. But if they want to like you, it's going to be very easy for you. Okay, that's all I'm going to say now. So I'd like to say, if you have questions or comments, just comments, or your experience, or some heresy, anything. It'll help us understand a little better the theme and maybe one another. Okay.
I have a question. So I was wondering, whenever you were talking about consciousness, would you equate that to like just being present or being more aware of what's happening around you? Or is that the same thing?
Very good, very good question. Because consciousness and presence are very, very related. You know, well, you take an example of a husband and wife, and he's watching a football game, and she's trying to talk to him about something, and finally she says, "Well, where in the hell are you anyway? You're not present." See, what is presence? That's a good question, because presence is being with someone in a way that makes a difference. That's presence. See, if the guy's watching a football game and is just absorbed in that, you're really not present to him. So if you're there or not, really doesn't change anything in him. Now, if he pays attention to you, something's going to change to him. He's more present. Presence, well, I think presence pretty well puts together these things. You know, we're really present to one another more or less, no? Physically, you can be there, and inside, in your consciousness, you can just be somewhere else. And we say that, no? Where are you? We're somewhere else. Okay, that would be my reflection on that. Good comment.
I was thinking if I am free person or happy person. I don't know which is first, happy person or freedom person. Well, you say free person is a happy person.
See?
And most of my time I was thinking, sometimes I feel free doing, as you say, I have the virtue to do, the virtue is the capacity to do what is good. So, and most of the time I think in myself, I think I am free person because I'm doing things that is good. But I can turn around and say I'm happy person because I'm doing, or I like to do good things.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Okay. That's a good comment also. Here's what I would say. I don't say this is an answer. Happiness is a result. It's not the cause of something. Happiness is a result. If you're a happy person, people are always going to say, why? What causes it? Now, happiness is that feeling of goodness, of satisfaction, and so on, because you recognize that something is good. You might be suffering, and you still, yes, but people say, was Christ happy on the cross? Well, he certainly wasn't happy in the sense of he was feeling good. He was very happy when he did that, because he wanted everybody to have an eternal life in the goodness of God. In that sense, happiness is seeing, recognizing that something is good. I believe that's what makes you happy. Now, the happiness about I'm happy because I just had 3 beers. That's a very, I guess it's a happiness, but it's superficial. That doesn't, 3 beers doesn't have any, it doesn't have anything to do with your person. It has to do with your physical makeup. So that's what I think about happiness. I think happiness is a result. People say, for example, if you are a grateful person, you have a grateful personality, you say, yeah, well, you can just say he's happy. It's a result. It's hard to be grateful and not be happy. You can complain and not be happy. That's understandable. Okay.
Thank you, Father.
Okay.
So guys, questions, comments? It's time.
Father, I got a question. So I guess throughout the chapters of the book, I I got the impression that, and well, not just impression, like I observed that, the more we put these virtues into practice, it just becomes more enjoyable, even though it's hard work to basically make some of these virtues enjoyable. However, at least in my experience, what I find is sometimes, while I may be perfectly content practicing the virtues, that all of a sudden I feel, I guess, unhappiness, dissatisfaction with being virtuous. And so
Sure.
I don't know, it's just a very strange thing that we should be happy by doing the right thing, by practicing virtues, but how is it that our spirit somehow how is it that our spirit can get tired of doing the right thing, and how do we combat that, I guess, desire to basically how do we basically fight that desire to just kind of abandon the practice of virtues?
Okay. If I understand what you're getting at, you say, yeah, I feel good when I practice the virtues, but if I'm doing this all the time, I come to points where I get tired and say, well, it's really not all that great.
Yeah, get sick of it.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do I do in that case? Well, you see, feeling good about doing something is a question of feelings. That's our biological makeup, and everyone says, the psychologists and doctors all say, no one can live on a constant emotional high. It's impossible. So suppose you feel good about doing good for somebody. Yeah, but if you're working in a food kitchen and you're really happy dishing out this stuff to the poor because it's something good, but if you're doing it just for 6 hours, you're going to get tired and you say, "What? Hey, you're just not going to have that feeling." But probably when you go home and rest, you're going to feel good again about being good. There are just times like that. There are just times, and one of the virtues in the book, if in the purification virtues, there's one that says that deals with that. what do you do when you're in that stage? You say, well, I know this is a good thing. I also know that right now I'm really tired. So you decide, well, I have to take a rest. Or you say, well, there are only a few more, I'm going to finish it. And if you do, you're not gonna, you're tired, but you know you did something good. That's
Right.
all. But sometimes, yeah, you have to rest too. Your body, you can't. Your body is not just not made to be on a high all the time. That's why we sleep every night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
It's good.
Father Quentin, this is Beth in Houston. And
Okay, Beth.
hi. The very first book I read when I got introduced to the Marianist way 25 years ago was your book on virtues. And I've read through it several times in the years since then, and it's a fresh read every time, and it's reminding me that in a way, I think practicing virtues, for me anyway, is practicing the virtues. It's not always for me just completely innate in me. It is something that, kind of like exercise, I sometimes have to be conscious to remember, especially when I'm in a difficult situation, like with my mother right now. She's in mid to late stage dementia, and I adore her. I love her, but being around her right now is sometimes challenging. But it's important that I am, and I know that from a virtue standpoint, that's where I need to be. But that doesn't mean that I'm just hoppity skipping with delight to get there. And that really was not something I realized until hearing you speak tonight. And as a card carrying officer in your Texas fan club, I think I also want to tell you that you were one of the first Marianist priests I met, and you could have knocked me over when you claimed to be 90. You are clearly in both living the virtues and guiding us on them. It's certainly keeping you young, and definitely young at heart. And you happen to be living in one of my favorite places in this in this side of the world. And so we miss you here, but it is so good to see you tonight again. Oh, and one more thing. I did not realize, I had not really connected the dots on the word personality. I knew I wanted to tell you this. I'd like to hear, if you don't mind, just a little bit more about that definition. It's new to me. When I think of personality, I think of, well, as you said, they're cheerful, or they're not. I had not thought of it as a connector. You're connecting to another person. It's now a more active word for me. Yeah. So I would love to hear a little bit more about that, because I'm still getting used to it.
Okay. I'll say something about that, but let me say, first of all, what you said at the beginning is interesting. You said every time you go over the virtues or read the book, it seems like it's something new. Now, Father Shamanat says that's a good sign that you're growing, because The first time you read it what you are then. And when you practice the virtue, something changes, and you come back and you read it again, and you're the same person, but your personality, there's something that's different, and so it's a different experience. It's a new experience. Now Father Chaminade claims that goes on forever. You never get to the point of where you say, okay, that's it. There's always something new waiting for you in the virtues. Okay, now the other, about personality. Well, listen, that definition doesn't come from Webster. It actually comes more from my own experience, because working with that, and I say, well, what is it anyway? And it's more of what I see happening, especially in relationships. Gosh, there's so many. Well, in my work, there are more people that come to talk with relationship problems than talk about virtues. And so I see, and personality is just such a thing, because what determines a personality is what your person lives, and that expresses itself when you communicate with someone else. Mm-hmm. That's when it comes out. So the definition is actually, I guess, it's more my working definition than a psychologist would tell you something else. A scientific definition would be different, probably. So if it helps, great. If it doesn't, let it go.
I love it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So for the second characteristic on knowledge, you said it's like you're living like the true reality. Do you think reality is something that you have to actively search for, or is it something that you kind of just observe and experience?
Reality is something you discover, sure, because any reality, any happening, any person, any the world, the nature, you come up against it. Now, how do you take it in? See, it depends the idea you form of it, and whether you say yes or no to it. Now, but reality is reality. It's there. I know that one of our big problems today is that some of the philosophers of the last century, it's carried over now, say that we make our own reality. Well, their definition of reality is something other than what for me, reality is what is given. You discover it, and then you decide how you're going to live it. You say yes or no to it. You understand it more or less. That's why it's such an important thing. Our ideas, even of one another, they really it's very important. But reality is, to me, is the given. What I create myself, that's my creation. That's it's something else.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you to confirm or correct something. When you talked about when you relate, you communicate, or if you do not communicate, you're not relating, and so on. So this question of relating and the question of will, saying yes or no to something, that it is all relations are not good, or be
Right.
So you at times you do need to say no to a relationship or say
Good.
no to. There are toxic people and there are toxic events and there are things that destroy. And so one of the decisions you make conscious is being conscious of when something is good and will be helpful to you and something that ultimately is not interested in your good.
Okay.
And so you say yes or no to it.
I'm really glad you brought that up because that's important. When I say you say yes to reality, that doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything. It depends on the reality. Now, I would I could escape from this if I if I used the theologians and the philosophers. They say that evil is not a basic reality. It's real in the sense it happens, but it's a reality that's lacking something. Well, for example, a lie. You say, well, a lie, that's the reality. The person told a lie. See, but he's taking this capacity to communicate truth and goodness, and he's taking something away from that and directing it to ways that are going to harm people or do damage. That's evil. So, and when that happens, sure, you have to say no to, if someone wants to legalize evil, for example, you have to say no to it. Or if they want you to participate in it, you have to say no. That's good, because I didn't, that's right. And that means practically everything that comes along, we say, is this good or not? It's like anything that people say, is it true or not? And that's a constant discernment that we're doing also. That's a whole nother theme, but you're right. You have to say no to something. Jesus is always a good example. He said no to some things very clearly. But there are all things that when a person does them, he's taking something good and taking something away from it. That's evil. I don't know if that.
No, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was putting together the yes and no, the relating, the not. So
right.
the being conscious, being aware.
Very good comment. Very good comment. Yeah. Okay. All right.
No, I think a difficulty that I run into is that when I make that decision, I don't just walk away from it or say, I sometimes engage, and there's anger and negativity, and so there's a negative response. Right. Instead of just saying, I'm not participating in this, I'm going to walk away from it.
Yeah, well, that's that's the human decision and the human strength that we need. See, there are a lot of impulses and inclinations in us that go wrong. That's also one of the virtues of purification, no? Mm-hmm. The inclinations to things that are bad. We all got them. We all have those inclinations. So that's one of the works of purification. Those inclinations don't go away. It's just a matter of how to deal with them so that they don't guide our life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, listen, I don't know how long this is going to last, but before I want to thank all of you for still being there. I see nobody got up and turned it off and walked out. Great. Thank you. I enjoy that.
Okay, I guess we have time for one more question or comment. So.
Oh, okay. See if
I think if anyone else has one, I'll let y'all go before I ask.
Yeah. Okay. No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I guess this is a question completely, I guess, unrelated to the contents of the book. Well, I guess it is, but you know, the insights that you have in the book and the way you, I guess, describe the virtues, you know, and how we build them and so forth. Obviously, there's no book or person out there that can tell you, I guess, you know, the exact, you know, list of things that you need to do to become, you know, the best version of yourself. And so what kind of helped you, Father, in to, you know, have this clarity, you know, to have these insights revealed to you, to where you could basically share that with other people and basically help, you know, help others, help yourself. Like what helped you in your discovery process personally? I'm just curious.
Gosh. Well, I've just been very blessed in my life. This all started, my interest even in this started in when I was in the seminary. I studied, our seminary at that time was in Freiburg, Switzerland. And we studied the virtues in the novitiate and so on. But I always studied them like it's a study. And then you pass the exam and I put the book away, and I never took it as something that I would really put into my life and that I would change my life. Never had that idea. So I got good grades when I studied virtues, but I didn't get such good grades practicing them later on. And I didn't put that together until I got in the seminary, and we made a 30-day retreat with a Jesuit. And boy, I was really impressed by the Jesuit spirituality. And I went to him and I said, you know, I'm really thankful for this retreat. I'm thankful for the Jesuit spirituality. I'm going to try to adapt that some way for the Marianists. And he said, that would be a terrible mistake. He said, if you're real, if you're Marianist and if you're authentic, you've got something that's Marianist. And I said, well, I don't know. He said, but don't you have any? What? So I said, well, there's a system of virtues that we studied. And he said, well, go home and really study that and put it into practice. So that's when I started. And, well, I'll tell you, I'll also tell you this. Once, the first book I wrote was The Grain of Wheat. It's also on the virtues. But at that time, one of the Marianist sisters in San Antonio read the book, and she said, I really liked the book. She said, but it would be much easier to accept this if I could see you practicing it. So that also made me change some things. And finally, I don't know, there's so many things like that. Just take advantage of what happens to you. Because in your life, no matter what happens, God always has something there that you can say, take it into your life, but make it fit, be in harmony with yourself. See?
Cool.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much, Father Quentin, for this
You're welcome.
session, and I hope everyone enjoyed.
Yo tengo a María, la madre de Jesús. Él me la entregó al pie de la cruz, diciéndome, hijo, allá a tu madre, diciéndole, mujer, allá a tu hijo. Aquí estoy yo y digo sí, para acogerla como madre de mi vida. Aquí estoy yo y digo